my fellow Witchers? Welcome back to the Witcher Lorecast. This is your host, Tom, or Robots, and I'm here, as usual, with my favorite toaster of all, Toasty.
I mean, that means a lot when the toaster from Fallout New Vegas Old World Blues exists. So, you know, I appreciate that.
I was thinking about the old Disney cartoon with the toaster that travels across wherever. Do you remember that cartoon with the little toaster? Do you remember that? It's a Disney classic.
Idea.
I don't know.
A Disney classic. I'm not old enough for Disney classics.
It's a Disney classic. I don't know. It was the somebody's going to be yelling at their radio or headphones or something. Anyway,
can you give me a decade? Because I was
Adventures of the Brave Little Toaster. Thank you, Nightwing in chat. There we go. The Brave Nightwing Courier knows too.
Of that
the Brave. You don't know the Brave Little Toaster? This is why you don't have a soul, Toasty. Is because you've never watched the Brave Little Toaster.
Or maybe because this is like not my time period.
No. Disney classics are ageless. You can watch. Listen, if anybody with a grandmother and a VHS player.
I didn't have a grandmother.
That's the problem. We've discovered it. Now we know. But anyway, welcome back to the show, everybody. Now we know why Toasty is so grumpy and doesn't have a soul. But welcome back. We are continuing this month's trend of monster episodes, our bestiary, with a new episode this week about another creepy monster. Toasty, what are we digging into this week? What are we digging up? What monster are we digging up and exhuming?
That's actually a very literal sense of the word, because normally you find them in crypts or sarcophaguses.
Yeah, that works.
No, sarcophagi. We will be talking about Striga.
The Striga. Yeah.
Striga.
I did that on purpose. I'm glad you caught that. But we're talking about Striga this week. I love monsters. Monsters are so good. Oh, if you were here for the live part of the pre-show, which also goes out to our patrons, then you will have heard us bantering a little bit back and forth about what we will be discussing next week, which I think might be werewolves. That doesn't start with a V sound, but I think we might do werewolves. So stay tuned for that one. That's coming up next. But let's go ahead and start tackling the Striga. Where do we begin?
So we begin with how do you get a Striga? How is a Striga made?
How do you make a Striga?
Because it's not your typical monster. So it's not. In order to make a Striga, you have to curse somebody.
Okay. So like this, like you like they sideswipe you with their car. You pull over the side of the road and you're like, "Curse you, terrible driver." Like that.
Then they become a Striga. Isn't the best idea, because then they just murder you, because now they're a Striga and you're just a person. Don't curse people in traffic. You might get torn apart. So there's not much known about the curse that turns females into Striga. Striga are females specifically, although those are just the documented cases. We don't know. It's not a well documented phenomenon. The only well-documented example of a Striga's lifetime was that of Ada the White, daughter of Foltest, king of Temeria. She was cursed prior to her birth, then born a Striga. She and her mother, who did not survive the birth, were laid to rest in a single tomb. For 7 years, she grew inside the sarcophagus, only to emerge a creature of predatory instinct with the size and skill to carry it out.
This story is so good. I love the way that this is represented.
Yeah, especially the episode of the Netflix series, because it's like the most intense things all put into the same episode, and it's like, oh, amazing.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
In order to lift Ada's curse, Geralt had to prevent the Striga from returning to her coffin by the third crowing of the rooster. Only then was the curse lifted, returning her to the state of an ordinary little girl. So this isn't your typical, monster situation where the only way to really deal with it is to kill it. You can reverse the curse.
And that is the more humane way to do it, being that this is kind of a monster in appearance and situation only. This is like the real state of this is a human, and on top of that, a little girl, a child who is cursed. So this is a human in need of help. And the Witcher's job here, if they are sympathetic to that, and of course Geralt is to try to reverse the curse and save the child rather than simply kill the monster. So it puts them in a very dire situation where they're trying to not only, remove the monster from the situation, but do it as carefully as they can, which makes it even more dangerous for them because they have to wait out the curse. It makes it way more dangerous than just fighting off the monster.
Yeah. And this is typically like a situational thing because not much is known about Strigas other than Ada's case in particular. But in Ada's case, since she was cursed before birth and lifting the curse would impact her mental faculties negatively because she spent 7 years or 7+ years as this monster. So, it's like kind of animal instinct alone. It sleeps, it feeds, it hunts. It's not a human. It doesn't have human emotions or anything. It just feeds and like sustains itself. Since she had no exposure to humanity, she had to then learn speech, proper behavior, etc. at a much older age than normal. It would be similar to
finding like a feral child in the wilderness and then trying to raise it at a much older age where it wouldn't have been, acclimated to society. And this has happened historically. People have found children in the wilderness that were raised by wolves and things, and they, weren't acclimated to society. They didn't have, hadn't learned how to speak languages or bathe themselves or eat using utensils or any of these kinds of things. But this would be, of course, a step more extreme because the child was a monster, not just raised by wolves.
Yeah. And the other risk involved with reversing the curse is that there is a chance of relapse. So if you break the curse and someone turns from a Striga into a human, they can still get turned back into a Striga. And to prevent this, they had to wear sapphire amulets and participate in rituals designed to ward off the curse. And I think specifically the sapphire was it had to have an inclusion, which is a pocket of air inside the sapphire for it to work like the most effectively.
I wonder if that were to break, if that would completely ruin the effectiveness of it.
So it's very, there's a lot of, it's not a surefire thing. There's a lot of risks involved with this, not only on the Witcher side of like trying to break the curse, the risks involved with trying to survive an entire night with the Striga, but then, the chance of it getting turned back and having to like learn how to be a human.
Yeah, it's all around a terrible situation. And on top of it, very limited, like you said earlier, a very limited amount of knowledge about it because it's a very rare thing to encounter altogether. So what do we know about the behavior and abilities of the Striga itself?
All right, so we have found like the listed from the bestiaria in the first Witcher game, because the Striga is a monster in that game. It actually deals specifically with Ada in that game. So, but a Striga may tolerate.
You made faces. Are you being hunted by monsters? Is there something in your house? Do you need to go?
I heard a noise. I had to make sure.
You need to go get your silver sword and fight something off.
Yeah. So I think I'm good. I think it was just construction, but sometimes those sounds can get a little, confusing.
Okay. All right. I'll let you know if something's creeping up behind you.
Yeah, because you can see my background. I can't even. A Striga may tolerate necrophages. She needs a hideout during the day, often choosing a sarcophagus in a forgotten branch of a crypt. So they go for like underground, like enclosures in tombs. They go for specifically like actual closed tombs that they can like stay in.
Places where people tend not to go visit very often. Places kind of locked away underground.
They are resistant to steel, which is something we see a lot of with monsters. There's very few monsters where steel is more effective. Sensitive to silver. So another common trait. A Striga may be freed from her curse by those who survive a night near her sarcophagus. So I think it's interesting. So I guess you don't have to be, I wonder, because we know specifically Geralt's case where he locks himself inside it so that the Striga can't get in it. Mm-hmm. But I'm wondering, like, you know, if somehow you were to go undetected, just like, you know, sitting behind it, would that work too?
Probably. The sense I get is that he realizes that the safest way to do that, because she has heightened senses and those kinds of things, is to lock himself in so that she can't get to him. That it's actually it's easier for him to avoid her, not through avoiding detection, but from just avoiding her being able to get to him. And so that's his method for doing so.
And then a Striga is a very strong and agile creature, but not as resilient as she might seem. She attacks by surprise and tries to tear opponents to pieces without giving them a chance to fight back. Near her sarcophagus, a Striga is always stronger. And it says here, the Striga attacks using the blinding critical effect that's specifically for
in the game.
Game.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's, you kind of have to, if you're trying to lift the curse, you're forced to deal with them near the sarcophagus, which means that they're stronger.
Right.
So,
right. They're also familiar with the area. I mean, that's where they live. You know?
Yeah, their hunting grounds are that same area. So, yeah. In the case of Ada, she specifically hunted out of the old castle. And there was like rare instances where she'd go outside the castle. Most of the time she didn't need to. So it was like, yikes.
Yeah. She knows all the nooks and crannies and all the places to hide and jump out from. So yeah, that's going to be the most dangerous place you could possibly be.
Yep.
Oh man.
You know, you want to lift that curse, you got to do it. You gotta get it.
So
Drink
what else?
Potions.
Drink your potions. Get ready. So what else do we know about Ada specifically?
So I think this is interesting because it's specifically one of the few like very detailed monster interactions that we get with Geralt, because we don't see a whole lot of, like, as far as the books go, we get to see him fight a lot more in the show, but of course they want to play up the monster fighting action and stuff. Right. But specifically like in the books, you don't really get to fight. There's not very many parts. You get this specific, fight, which is very long, detailed. There's a lot of details in it. And then like his fight with the Bruxa and the Novellan story. Most of the time it's just really like small thing of saying like him being at the end of the fight or, dealing with the fight quickly. Cause a lot of the times he's fighting just humans and he's just way faster and stronger.
Yeah. He pirouettes.
Don't really stand a chance.
He pirouettes.
Yes,
and then
he pirouettes.
Right.
Which he does do in this fight. That is a thing he does in this fight too. That's a very important detail.
Which I have a guess about that. And who else? Somebody commented about that on our Discord. And my guess is that that's a word that translates from the original what's the word? What language was it originally in?
Polish.
I'm like, it starts with a P, but it wouldn't come to my brain. My guess is that there's a Polish word that's about as the closest thing that it translates to. And it means that he spins. He's dodging and spinning while also, using his blade, and he's doing it quickly in a way that's very, agile and tactical and faster than the other people can see him and respond. And
which
the closest word you can get to in English is like pirouette, but that's weird to us, but I think that's why they use the word pirouette so much.
Yeah. I think it's just not as commonly associated, because one of the biggest things, it seems like, because I've seen a lot of people who have reacted to kind of that fight from the Butcher Blaviken scene where he fights with Renfrey. And a lot of people really admonish the fact that there's a lot of spinning. Yeah. Because you're not supposed to show you're not supposed to turn your back to your enemy, even if you're like doing something like that. Like, you really shouldn't make moves like that because you're just exposing yourself too much. Right. Which is something that he can do more easily because he doesn't have to worry about his back being turned long. He's fast. So he can literally just spin like, where his back is shown for like not even half
fractions
a second. Really. Right. So it's not really right. And I think that's a thing that,
yeah, he doesn't move like a regular human being. Exactly. Yeah. He's like, and I think that's something that, and I've watched videos too, where, actual sword fighters have said things like, well, let's take a look at The Witcher and the swordplay in The Witcher. And they'll say things like, well, nobody's going to use reverse grip in a real fight because it reduces the length of your sword arm and like those kinds of things. And absolutely, I get all of that. And you're right. But at the same time, he's like a superhero, like, right?
Yeah. Like he doesn't have to worry about the length of his arm because he has the speed to compensate for the length of his arm.
His reaction time, his movement speed, all of those things are well above regular human speed. And so therefore he's not going to move and fight like a regular human. He's going to move and fight in ways that human beings wouldn't, because he's going to do things that humans aren't going to be able to predict. If he was to move like a regular human, they'd be able to predict some of those things. He's going to move in ways that don't make sense to people. And that's what's going to catch them off guard. So that makes sense to me in some ways. But anyway, so let's go on. Let's talk about Ada. So what else do we know?
So we know that she was the daughter of Foltest, King of Temeria, and she was born a Striga as a result of a curse cast by either, and this is kind of a thing because they're not entirely sure, by either Ostrit, a local magnate who loved her mother and was like jealous that she was with Foltest, so ended up cursing Foltest's seed essentially. Right. And that's what happened. Or Sansia, Foltest's mother. The magnate was in love with the king's sister, the mother of the princess, whose name was also Ada. When he learned of the incestuous relationship between the king and his sister, Ostrit tried to put a curse on the king, and this is blamed for Ada's transformation into a Striga. However, Foltest's mother was also furious at the incestuous relationship between her children and may also have cursed their child. So it is possible that either Ostrit or Sansia or both were the cause of the curse. Or both.
So the lesson here is don't have an incestuous relationship because it might cause all sorts of problems.
Yeah. So you might birth a Striga and you probably won't survive because it's a clawed beast. It'll probably tear itself out of you and you will die.
Right. So incest, bad. Don't do it.
Yeah. This is definitely one of the more scary ways of condemning incestuous relationships that I've seen in media. So absolutely. I think it's effective. I think it's pretty effective. Geralt was tasked by King Foltest to remove the curse from Ada, which we get to see this take place either by reading the first story chapter in the last book. So in the last Wish book, right. Which is the first book in the series, which is, and I say first story because there is an overarching like chapter process called the voice of reason that takes place in between every chapter. But like then the stories themselves take place. And this is like the first one, just titled The Witcher. You can watch the opening cutscene in the Witcher video game. The first Witcher. When you start the game, you will see the cutscene of Geralt fighting the Striga, Ada.
Which back in, what was that, 2007 when that game came out, was super impressive. Like the game graphics itself looked like an old 2007 video game, but like that opening sequence when that game came out was like super cool for its time. Like I remember watching that going, man, this is badass. Like, okay, I'm sold. This is cool.
Yeah. Or in episode 3 of the Netflix series Betrayer Moon, which this whole fight is accented by the fact that Yennefer is doing her whole sorceress transformation. So it makes it even more terrifying, to be honest.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
It's pretty, because you get a lot of like very scary screams from Yennefer's side of things while this fight is happening. It's pretty intense. So there's a lot of options for which you can watch the fight. And I'm not going to break down the fight, by detail, because what you need to know is Geralt did a lot of things to try and fight off the Striga, and then ends up locking himself in the tomb so that he can keep her from re-entering it. Or you can look it up on YouTube and find any of these things in a YouTube video. So,
right. Yeah. Go look these up on YouTube. And if you haven't watched the Netflix series, go watch that too. I
highly recommend it. The choreography and stuff is really good. So it's like a really good fight scene, really intense and scary. And you get to see Geralt use a chain, which is like the only fight we ever see him use a chain at. So, or the freaking wolf knuckles.
The wolf knuckles.
Cool. He puts on like silver knuckles, like not brass knuckles, but silver knuckles, and then punches her.
That whole scene is really cool. And then you don't need to go back and play the first Witcher game unless you really want to. It does feel like an old game, but looking up the cutscene sequence from this is really cool too. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube. It's cool stuff. And then of course reading the books. The Last Wish is a great book. It's a bunch of short stories. It's really easy to just read one of the short stories at a time. So
the very first one too. Really, you just get into it, and it's only, you can listen to it on Audible. It's like an hour.
Absolutely. So. In fact, there's, I'll have to put this in the show notes. We have a link that you can use to get audiobooks.com for audiobooks.com, and you get 3 credits for free through us if you use the link, and we get a little bit of credit back for that, so you can help support the podcast, and it's free. And with those 3 credits, you can actually get 3 books in 1 month, which is super cool. I need to be
this month you get The Last Wish, you get The Sword of Destiny, and you get The Blood of Elves, and then next month you move on to the next 3.
So that's like absolutely free. So really easy to do if you want to go listen to the books. And The Last Wish is so easy to get into because each of the stories is kind of standalone. So you don't even have to like get into a novel because each story is just easy to digest on its own. All right, well, let's move on to the middle of the show. And then what are we going to talk about when we get back for the second part of the episode?
We are going to talk about some of the actual folklore inspirations for this show.
Nice. I love this stuff because so many of the inspirations for the creatures in The Witcher come from not just Western European folklore, which are the kinds of monsters that we're more familiar with here in the US, things like vampires and werewolves and things like that, but Eastern European folklore, which we're less familiar with. So very cool stuff. All right, here we go.
Very well. Let us get this over with. Something has infested my vineyard.
Great. Let me go prepare my something oil then.
All right, so welcome to the middle of the show, and this is where we get to thank our patrons. We currently still have 6 patrons, so thank you to all of our patrons, including all 6 of you. And I'm just gonna name everybody again because you guys are so awesome. We've got Lord Tizer, we have Venetwo, Fishdew, Mark 10 Gamer, Turbo Toboggan, and Ben of Temeria. Thank you to all 6 of you guys for helping to support the show. You guys are awesome. If we've done anything to help you get through your workday, your commute, your workout, or your washing of your friends' dogs, I'm expanding out to when you help your friends wash their dogs. Then
it's just an excuse to like wash more dogs, like enhance your relationship with your friends and give them a clean dog.
Yeah.
And you just get to listen to more of the podcast.
Absolutely.
So like there's no loss there.
No loss there. I did have to wash my own dogs recently, and that's why that's on my mind, because one of my dogs had poopy butt, which is a common problem that dogs get when their hair gets too long around their butt. And I had to trim off the hair around the butt and clean the butt and wash the dog. So that's why it's on my mind. And
did you listen to a podcast?
I should have been listening. Well, we had my in-laws were over. It wasn't really a good time to listen to podcasts while washing a dog because they were here. So I was talking to them while I washed the dog. And the dogs are little, so I can put them in the sink. So it was in the middle of the room. Anyway, But if they hadn't been here, it would have been a great opportunity to put a podcast on while I listened to a podcast. I could have been washing
while you lessened.
While I lessened,
Tom,
I could have anyway.
Tom,
but if
is there a contract I need to take on you, Mr.?
No, totally fine. But anyway,
keep an eye on this guy
while you're washing anybody's butts. If we're there to help you get through that, then please consider going to patreon.com/WitcherLorecast and taking a look at all the different tiers and all the different things you can get for helping to support the show. Toasty and I would very, very much appreciate that. And we love our patrons because you guys are the best. You can get ad-free episodes and all sorts of other things, including joining us at the end of the month, which is always a wonderful time. So go check that out. And let's see, what else do we have to talk about? We've got some reviews. We
got some reviews. Oh, Ben of Temeria, our good Witcher friend, says a good listen while on the path. Yes, we give you lots of knowledge you need to know. So
thank you.
Like how to kill wraiths, because we did that last week.
That's true. You might need that while you're on the path. In fact, you probably will.
You probably will. Wraiths pretty common.
Pretty common. Yeah. So we've got some new ones. Our good buddy Lord Tizer wrote in and to Apple Podcasts, which is where you do put these reviews because it really does help get the word out. And Lord Tizer wrote, Witcher talk and hilarious banter, 5 stars. Listening to the two hosts go at each other is just hilarious. Thank you, Lord Tizer. You can just feel Toasties, don't know current proper spelling because he keeps changing it. LOL. Patience ebbing away as Tom makes another joke in the middle of the former's explanation of a specific event or person. The Witcher is amazing but dark property. Having the two hosts break up the seriousness of some of the events with humor is the perfect way to discuss the rich world of The Witcher, yet through it all they managed to dive deeper into the lore from the books, movies, and games and become better friends. I added that last part. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you, Lord Tizer. That is amazing.
I don't know how good friends we are. I might have to kill you soon since you're talking about
friendly way
being a Leshen.
It's a friend in a friendly way.
I don't know. I mean, We'll see.
I thought I was accidentally saying I was a Leshen. Then we have Ed.
Yeah, and I'm a Witcher, so obviously I have to take a contract.
No, it was a joke.
I don't have a sense of humor. I'm a Witcher.
Okay? Oh crap!
You've doomed yourself.
Oh no, crap. Okay. Then we have Ed of Lyria, who also wrote in from the US and says, "Spooktober!" 4 exclamation marks, 5 stars. I've been listening for about a week, and I started with a Netflix show and have now moved into the games. Well, welcome to the world of the games. That's awesome. You guys are awesome. I love the show. It's super informative, and I now host a listening party with my friends. Well, hello, listening party friends. Hi, everybody. That's amazing.
That's absolutely incredible. Wow.
Awesome?
I've heard of watch parties. I've never heard of listening parties before.
Yeah, this is cool, huh? We all really enjoy the show. We are all now new Witchers in training. That is awesome. Ed of Lyria, welcome to the Witcher Friends Society.
Ed of Lyria, I've asked in the Discord. I need to know, what school are you from? I need to know.
I think it might be a wolf or a cat.
Yeah, it's probably because those are obviously the most common ones, but we don't know. But yeah. I would love to find out.
Yeah.
If you're a viper, I don't think I can associate with you. I'm sorry.
Maybe
just don't be a viper, please.
Don't be a viper. All right. Well, don't be a viper or a bear. Well, bears don't have friends, so you've got to be.
Yeah, it's fine if you're a bear. I'm just not gonna try to hang out with you at all. But he listens. There's listening parties. They can't be a bear. They don't have any friends.
That's what I'm saying. They can't be a bear. But anyway, thank you so much, Ed, and your listening party friends. And also, we'd love to have you guys join us on the Robots Radio Discord. There's a link in the show notes. You can also just search it. Come let us know what you associate yourself with as a Witcher, what group you're part of, and how the games are going. Let us know how your gameplay is. We'd love to hear about your games and what's going on with that.
Hop in the Discord, bring all your friends, all your listening party friends, right? Bring them all into the Discord. Do your listening party in one of the Discord channels, and
that would be
maybe
awesome.
we'll just bomb it. and be like, what's the point in listening to the show? No.
What? Okay.
No, I'm kidding.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for taking your time to drop some reviews. And if you also want to help us out, just like Ed has here, tell your friends about the show. That would be amazing. That all of that word of mouth is absolutely the best way to help us spread word of the show. And any help you can give us would be amazing. That really does help us out. So thank you to everyone and for all of your support. You guys are absolutely the best. All right, let's get on with the rest of the show.
You smell of death and destiny, heroics and heartbreak.
It's onion.
Right, yeah.
Do you think they're yelling "ba" like a sheep?
I mean, possibly.
Should I play it again?
So, though.
You want to listen again? Here, listen again. I'll have to play the whole thing and then we'll get to the end part. Let's just listen carefully.
You smell of death and destiny, heroics and heartbreak.
Wait for it.
It's onion.
Right, yeah.
Well, that part's always hard to hear. I don't hear like a hard consonant sound at the end. I just hear like,
I don't know. Sometimes I hear it and to me it sounds like...
It's just an auto-tuned scream of terror, I think. I think it's just someone screaming as they're trying to flee a monster and it's just been auto-tuned. Yeah.
Envy Courier in chat says, Sega.
That is also possible. It does sound very similar, to be honest.
All right. So, okay. What is the real world influence for the Striga?
So it seems like there's a main couple things, but honestly, I think that some of these things, there's multiple. I found like multiple things with similar names that all derive from the root word strix. So that seems to be, which is a strix is a bird of prey. I think specifically like an owl type creature or something that hunts at night.
Okay.
Which kind of fits because they are hunters and they hunt at night. But it seems like a lot of these words all derive from strix. But the main thing, and since this is a like Polish author, Polish game studio, I went with the Polish folklore to start because it's probably one of the biggest influence, which is the strzyga.
Yeah, Polish pronunciations are something that I'm not very good with.
That's STRZYGA.
Right. We have some members in our community that are Polish, and I've been told that they will help me with Polish pronunciations, and I've yet to follow through with that, but I need to. And I hear it's not actually that hard, but I just have not yet educated myself. But yes, STRZYGA. However that's pronounced. Yes.
Which is very close to Striga, I think. I have to assume, but who knows? Which is typically a female demon, somewhat similar to a vampire in Slavic and especially Polish folklore.
That makes sense.
People who were born with two hearts and two souls and two sets of teeth, the second one barely visible, were believed to be Strizgi.
Hold on.
I think is the singular version is Strizgi.
People born with two hearts. Okay, so that's very rare.
Mm-hmm.
Is this like conjoined twins? Maybe.
Possibly. This might be
two sets of teeth. Yeah. So maybe conjoined twins at the waist. Maybe two souls. So I would imagine conjoined twins at the waist. They would look like two individuals now stuck with their bodies together. That could make sense. Or like the sides, like so that like their circulatory systems were almost combined. Maybe at the side of the chest or something. That could be it. That's weird. Now, an individual person who's not just conjoined people with two hearts, that seems super rare. Two sets of teeth where the second set is almost invisible. Everybody has two sets of teeth because our teeth fall out, our baby set falls out, and then the second set comes in, right? but two sets of teeth at the same time, like shark teeth, where they're like layered, that's not particularly common. Especially two sets of hearts, and then two souls. How do you know if somebody has two souls? We can't even figure out how to confirm if anybody has one soul. There's no way to objectively confirm that. Do you lay on hands and say a prayer and go, oh, this person feels like they have two souls? Like, how do you, what? I don't know how you confirm that, but okay.
I don't know. This is Polish folklore. Tom.
Folklore.
I don't think we're gonna find anyone.
You bring in a witch or a sorcerer, and then they just like, yes, this person has two souls, and you're like, oh no. All right. So let's go on.
That's not the only things though, Tom. There's other possibilities here. So somnambulics. I don't know.
Somnambulics. Okay.
Somnambulics, or people born without armpit hair, could
People,
also be seen
everybody's born without armpit hair. Some people just don't grow it when they.
There must have been a lot of Strigoi in old Poland.
Yeah, so somnambulism is sleepwalking. So, like people who sleepwalk, or people without armpit, like people who grow up and mature but never grow armpit hair, maybe are also seen as being Striga.
There's we're still going, Tom.
This is super weird. Keep
Furthermore,
going. Let's do
a
it.
Newborn child with already developed teeth was also believed to be one.
That's super weird. All right, keep going.
So when a person was identified as a strzyga, they were chased away from human dwelling places. During epidemics, people were getting buried alive, and those who managed to get out of their graves, often weak, ill, and with mutilated hands, were said to be strzygi by others. So, if you got buried alive and managed to get out, you were also a monster. So
well, this is actually very common. A lot of myths about vampires, zombies, even werewolves and things like that were often came from people who were thought to be dead and were buried, only later to have dug themselves back out of the ground, or to be dug back up because they weren't actually dead, because they didn't have modern medicine. They weren't able to determine for sure that the person was dead or not. And later the person wasn't dead, and they would fight their way out of the ground, and were then in a terrible situation because all they had to dig their way out was their hands, right? Can you imagine being, and they weren't always buried, 8 feet under, right? So imagine being buried a few feet underground in a shallow grave, and then you wake up and you're exhausted and you're not feeling great, and you realize that you're in the dark and underground, and then you spend a day trying to dig yourself out from underground with your fingers. Can you imagine the condition of your hands and your body after trying to do so? Like, you would be exhausted. You'd probably have bloody fingers. You'd probably have yelled yourself and freaked out, right? The situation would be terrible. If you had yelled and somebody had found you, they would have freaked out. Like the whole, and they may have thought you were undead. They may have thought you've come back to life. That whole situation is super weird. Also, you would have freaked everyone out in the village because they thought you were dead. So,
isn't there, like, didn't they implement didn't they have like bells with strings that went into like the coffins or something?
Yeah,
sometimes,
sometimes,
like, if you were alive and they mistook you could just ring the bell and they would dig you up.
Right. Some places had to implement things like that too.
I'm wondering how that worked because they talk about that, but the real question is, what if it was just a windy day?
Right. Something just blew the bell and you're like, oh
yeah, the wind just blows the bell. It starts dinging and you're like, oh no, they're alive. And
Grandma's back.
And
then you dig Grandma back up and it's like, nope, Grandma's not back.
And how long did they leave the bell for? Did they just like leave it like 2 generations later? Is the bell still there? The wind starts blowing it and they're just like, they dig it up and there's just a skeleton in a box.
Right.
What?
Yeah. 40 years later, Grandma woke up.
Yeah, man. Modern science is a crazy thing. That's so great.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to, this is how we tell someone's alive. Something that could literally be dinged by anything. Oh yeah,
right.
sure.
Also, if you're buried and underground and in the dark and have no way of, like, how do you find the string?
Or they just tie it to your finger.
They just tie it so that
that's what I would do.
Yeah, but human beings are not necessarily smart. How many generations did they go before they even came up with the bell solution? And then how many more generations did they go before somebody came up with the maybe we should just tie it to grandma's finger solution?
Yep, pretty much. We're still trying to come up with solutions to the problems that are just that simple, Tom. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. I'm not going to say any specifics. Anyway,
moving on.
It is said that Strigoi usually died at a young age, but according to belief, only one of their two souls would pass to the afterlife.
Well, the
other soul was believed to cause the deceased Striga to come back to life and prey upon other limbic beings. These undead creatures were believed to fly at night in the form of an owl or Strix, and attack nighttime travelers and people who had wandered off into the woods at night, sucking out their blood and eating their insides. Delicious. The Striga were also believed to be satisfied with animal blood for a short period of time. According to other sources, Strigoi were believed not to harm people, but to herald someone's imminent death.
So they were like harbingers of like ill omens.
Mm-hmm. So, and this is kind of the most detailed thing I was able to find here. So I have a little thing here about Strigoi in Romanian mythology, which some people might have heard of. Related. They're used in a little bit in some like more modern media. If anyone's read the Vampire Academy series, it's a book series. They have Strigoi, which are evil vampires in that one. You may be familiar with that term, are troubled spirits that are said to have risen from the grave. They're attributed with the abilities to transform into an animal, become invisible, and to gain vitality from the blood of their victims. Bram Stoker's Dracula has become the modern interpretation of the Strigoi through their historic links with vampirism. Strigoi is a Romanian word that originated from a root related to the Latin terms strix or striga, with the addition of the augmentative suffix oi, feminine oie, but
O-A-I-E. Yeah.
Yes. So surprise, we are also not fluent in Latin.
Yeah, I took a Latin course and then didn't continue it when it went in college, where there were enough people who signed up for the second year, and it had to go into like a private study class. And I was like, I'm never going to survive a private study class of second year Latin. So
language is hard.
I go to French.
I took 3 years of Chinese in high school and went to China. And you know what I remember from that class? Ni hao. That's all I got.
Oh God.
Sorry. I forgot everything, but yeah. So, and then I found, there was a couple other words that kind of had the same kind of like pronunciation-ish kind of thing. There was one like a strishta, which I can't remember what origin that was, but it was basically a witch that could turn into a bird and hunted people at night kind of thing.
Same kind of origin for the night hunting bird. Right.
Yeah, it seems like this is a common thing, and it's just a different interpretation based on whatever culture or country it came from. So
that makes sense.
But it's all kind of the same sounding with Strix kind of with it. So
same kind of word origin, night hunting bird, creature, undead kind of thing.
Which I think in this situation, so the Striga don't turn into owls, but they do have kind of that same like hunting instinct and hunting ability that like a night bird of prey would have. So it fits. It's kind of a fitting thing there.
I think that totally makes sense. That seems to be very influential in the design of this monster. You know, all of those things kind of, you know, come together to make sense for inspiration for this monster in these stories. So that's great. That's really cool. I love the inspiration. I love how all of this stuff usually comes together in modern works of fiction. So very cool stuff.
So
very
just
cool.
For anyone out there listening to the podcast right now, so if you happen to have been born with 2 hearts and 2 souls and 2 sets of teeth, you are a Striga. If you sleepwalk, you are a Striga. If you don't have armpit hair, you are a Striga. And if you were born with a fully developed set of teeth, also a Striga. So, just take that to bed. Think on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Too bad. Especially sleepwalkers. That's a very common thing. Sorry.
I think I'm a sleepwalker. I haven't done it in a while, I don't think, but I have slept walked.
If you've done it even once, you are a Striga.
All right, then I'm a Striga. This is really,
you better tell your wife.
Now I'm confused.
She's in danger
because I am also a Witcher. Am I obligated?
You have to hunt yourself
to take a contract on myself.
You do.
Ben, are you listening? I need you. I need you to do me a favor, Ben.
And Tamaria.
I trust you, Ben. I know you'll do the right thing.
We're going to crowdfund a bag of gold. Everybody chip in. Maybe we can use this month's Patreon money, put it together, and we're going to pay Ben. This is going to go back into Ben's pocket to hunt down Toasty. But what am I going to do? My co-host will be killed. Maybe I'll get Ben to do the show with me.
Ben's pretty knowledgeable. Ben could probably do it.
Yeah, Ben's fine. Like, yes,
it's fine.
Ben's
even more. He's like, I'll do it for free. Get Toasty out of the picture. Easy.
Everyone's gonna be like, wait a minute, Ben murdered Toasty and just took his position
we just wouldn't have a show anymore because you're apparently a Leshen.
I'm not. No, that was a joke.
So we have to contract you too.
How many?
So it's just Ben.
How many Leshens have you met that do podcasts?
I can strongly say 3.
Wait, 3? You know 3 Leshens that do podcasts?
Yes. It's apparently a very common pastime for Leshens.
I mean, Joe Rogan is a Leshen. That's true. Joe Rogan, he's one. Mm-hmm. Who else? Who else is a Leshen that does a podcast? I don't know.
I mean,
others.
I think I don't know. I think Jake Paul was attacked by a Leshen or something at some point. It was in a forest or something. I don't know.
All right. Well, that's unfortunate. Well, so what do we have coming up next week? Oh, we already talked about that. Bill Burr's a Leshen.
But if you want to say it on the official.
Okay, so officially, why don't we commit to this? Officially, we're going to talk about werewolves in the Witcher stories. And of course, these monsters in the Witcher stories aren't always exactly the same as you've heard about them in other stories. So we're going to talk about the Witcher spin on werewolves. Yeah. And also reference, their cultural backgrounds, because the cultural backgrounds, again, aren't the same as necessarily the modern retelling of werewolves. So we'll get into some of that next week. So that'll be fun. We'll continue our best here.
This is fitting because so the Wraith episode was based on people in the Discord and a general consensus, which I mean, all of them listed Wraiths in their lists of top 3 to 5 scariest monsters. So I was like, all right, Wraiths. Striga was my personal choice because thanks to the Netflix show, it's pretty terrifying. I mean, that umbilical cord just ruined everything for me. Sorry, that was the part that really messed things up.
It's never going to happen.
It's really not. So I was like, all right, Tom, it's up to you. You pick the next one. Because
so we're going werewolf.
It's fitting. Yeah.
So it's almost like we've done ghosts, sort of. We've done undead sort of creatures that it's kind of like a vampire. It's not exactly vampires, but kind of like vampires.
I think a Striga counts as a necrophage. So
it's a necrophage, still, kind of vampiric. And then we've got werewolves, which we've got kind of these are kind of mainline types of monsters. So that's pretty good for typical kinds of monsters for Spooktober. So we're covering our bases here.
And I mean, I've already said that we're probably going to do a type of vampire in December. So, we're going to cover all the bases for sure. Yeah. And we're going to get the Leshen. the week after.
The Leshy.
There you go. Spoiler alert for everyone. In 2 weeks, we will be talking about the Leshen with our good old friend Ben of Temeria.
Yeah, and anyone else who signs up for that tier 4 or higher slot.
Yeah, so if you want to talk about Leshens on the show with us, then...
Or if you are a Leshen...
Like Tom.
We could interview you.
Especially a Leshen that does a podcast.
Right. If you are a podcasting Leshen, come sign up. We'll interview you for that episode. We'll find out all about the life of a Leshen.
Doing a podcast. And then me and Ben will hit the path and...
murder us. All right. Wonderful.
Murder you because cool. You are Leshens.
Right, well,
that's just how it is.
We need to go and run away. So we'll see you next week, just like normal. And have a good week, everybody. Stay safe on the path. Thanks for being here. We'll see you guys same time, same place.
Are we not going to talk about our socials like we normally do?
We've got socials. Go look up our socials.
Sorry, I'm terrified, Tom. He's
scared.
Forgotten how to podcast now.
I'm scared. Also, we've got some other stuff to go over too. What are your socials, Toasty?
Well, of course, follow us at the Witcher Lorecast on Twitter, please. And then. Oh God, did I just say please? No, I take back the please. I'm toasty. I'm too mean to say please. Anyways, and if you want to join the Discord and talk to us, talk to me or Tom, we'll have some conversation about some Witcher stuff. Then join the Discord and join in on all the fun conversations.
Yep, and you can find me at robots_radio on Twitter. And also, you know what? We won't actually be here same time, same place next week because you're going on vacation. So we're going to pre-record next week's episode on Wednesday, which is just 2 days away. So come join us live on that episode on vacation. The 13th, which will be probably when some of you guys are listening to this episode. But that night, if you want to come join us on the night of the 13th, then you can come listen to that episode early by like a week while we record it live. Otherwise, it'll be out at normal time that week for podcast listeners. All right. I think that's it. Are we good?
I think so. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go get a head start. Before you kill me. All right. Bye, everybody. See ya. Thanks for tuning into the Witcher Lorecast. We'd love to hear about your experiences with the games and the books and the TV series and all your thoughts on everything. Please check out the Robots Radio Discord and follow us on Twitter at Witcher Lorecast.
You've been listening to a Robots Radio podcast. Smart shows for interesting people. Check out all the shows at robotsradio.net.